Hello there my dear friends, and welcome back to another very exciting Star Wars video. It is I coming at you once again, your favourite galactic hostess, Star Wars Meg. And I just want to begin by wishing you a very happy spooky month. It is the start of October and Halloween is upon us. So if you celebrate, I hope you're feeling spooky vibes. I might do something special for Halloween this year, not sure. But today, we're going to be returning to the Mandalorian and Grogu. Because while I've broken down the big Easter eggs and the references in the recent trailer, we need to talk about the elephant in the room, the projected performance and box office of the movie. Oh yes, I've seen many Star Wars fans and content creators alike share their predictions for how the movie's going to perform. But I think a lot of fans are missing the point, and so that's where this video comes in. I want to talk to you guys about how I think the movie's gonna do, but also Disney's logic for putting out this movie first. Now look, as you guys know, I enjoyed the trailer more than most. I understand the apathy around Star Wars at the moment. I understand the criticisms that the trailer just looks like another season of the TV show. I understand the confusion of them putting out this movie before Starfighter, and I could ramble to you guys all day about how this movie came 4 years too late, how they should have put a Mandalorian movie in the cinemas after the second season, when Mando hype and Grogu hype was at its peak. But I think we've already talked about those things enough. Now, I have seen predictions all over the map, and not just from Star Wars fans. I've seen industry insiders talk about it, I've seen the trades discuss it. On the lower end, there are some people who said it won't even break 200 or 300 million, and on the more ambitious end, I've seen some fans say it might make $1 billion or even $2 billion. Now personally, with all due respect to differing opinions, I think that's an absurd figure. If you want to know my take before I get into the breakdown, if you just want my quick response, I predict the movie's going to make between 500 and 700 million. But I'm going to share with you a few scenarios that I can definitely see playing out. And I also want to explain to you why Disney doesn't really care how this movie performs. Let me break this all down. So the first thing to note is the budget for The Mandalorian and Grogu is about $166 million. In terms of how this compares to other recent Star Wars movies, it is the cheapest of the Disney Star Wars era. Not the cheapest in Star Wars history, but the cheapest of the Disney Star Wars films. The Force Awakens cost about $366 million. Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, $236. The Last Jedi, Episode 8, $303 million. Solo: A Star Wars Story, which bombed, $310 million. And The Rise of Skywalker, $305. So $166 for The Mandalorian and Grogu is very cheap. And this is why, even if The Mandalorian and Grogu doesn't break $1 billion, it still will be considered a success. Not just this, Disney knows that they're going to put it on the streaming service after the movie's done the rounds. That's not even taking into account all the merch, general awareness, and cross-marketing of the Disney Plus show. And so because the budget is so cheap, they don't really care if it quote-unquote flops in the traditional sense. Even if it generates the same box office as Solo: A Star Wars Story. Comparative to its budget, The Mandalorian and Grogu will be considered a success. Another very important thing to keep in mind is this movie comes from several episodes that were going to be part of Season 4. So The Mandalorian and Grogu spawned after Jon Favreau wrote Season 4. And while the movie has been filmed for IMAX, it really is just a continuation of the same format. And because an average season of Mando costs around 120 million, similar to this movie, Disney is not treating this in the same way they would treat a sequel trilogy movie, or perhaps even the way they're going to treat Starfighter. They're seeing this as an extension of the TV show, so the bar is quite low for what's considered a success, especially compared to other Star Wars movies. Now this is where I want to talk to you guys about alternative scenarios. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm vastly underestimating the box office? What if casual audiences show up to this movie in droves? Because Grogu is a great attraction for Disney, a cash cow in terms of merchandise, wider appeal, for families, for kids. Someone actually wrote to me on Twitter about this and I think their point is very valid. And maybe I am being too narrow in my consideration of what online fans have said. The wider audience is bigger than you think, and not everyone has this apathetic view of Star Wars. So this person said, depends on marketing. Too many nerds in the social media echo chamber have an overinflated sense of their own impact on general audiences. there are practically zero major film releases between Avatar, that's Avatar 3 coming soon, and Mando. If the film looks entertaining and it's marketed well, it will make money. And in a way, I think this is why The Mandalorian and Grogu is so important, because if nothing else, it will tell us the general state of Star Wars outside of this online bubble, because since The Rise of Skywalker, it's all been streaming, and not everyone's seen all the shows. Not every general Star Wars fan knows about Kenobi, or Book of Boba Fett, or The Acolyte. Not every single fan on the planet is going to keep up with Star Wars news and the drama that goes on. So it will be interesting to see how the general, wider cinema goers react to The Mandalorian and Grogu. I think Disney knows this. They've put their flagship show, the one that kicked off Disney Plus in the first place, on the big screen. And we jolly well know the performance of Mando is going to dictate if the show comes back for season 4, or if they make more Mando movies. I'm already seeing people say this movie is dead on arrival, they're never going to make it into a trilogy, but I would say be patient, let's wait and see. It's not the best time to release it, I will give you that. That was a few years ago. But the appeal of Grogu still exists. I still see people buying Grogu merch, walking around with t-shirts that say this is the way. Just yesterday on the train I saw someone wearing that. I even see people wear those little Grogu Funko keychains, and they put them on their backpacks. And we know from several reports that despite the Disney Plus shows not making a profit, Star Wars merchandise is still a huge source of revenue for the mouse. And just go to Comic-Con or Star Wars Celebration, you will see that passionate Mando fans still exist. But like I say, it could go either way. I am sensing enormous apathy towards the brand. Just look at the views on the trailer. Compared to viewership on the sequel trilogy teasers, The Mandalorian and Grogu viewership is pretty low. So what's going to be vitally important in all of this is the currently unmeasurable hunger for The Mandalorian on the big screen. Maybe it will surprise us, or maybe it'll be a disaster. For my prediction, I'm going to stick to 500 to 700 mil. That's what I think the realistic ballpark is going to be. And then once the movie's gone out of cinemas, comes to Disney Plus, we'll see how many fans just waited to see it on the streaming service. And I'm sure there'll be a lot to break down. But I wanted to talk about this because there's a lot of talk, a lot of projections, and on the one hand I think people are being way too optimistic, and on the other, I think fans have forgotten that to many, Grogu is still an exciting prospect. Even if the Grogu fad peaked in 2019, 2020, there is still demand for him. And people might just go because they've seen the poster, they've seen maybe a trailer for it, they remember Star Wars from back in the day, and it just looks like a fun time. And if you think that's not going to happen, it has for me. In my case, it's a reverse situation. You guys know, or maybe you don't know, so I'll tell you now. I'm a Star Wars fan, but I'm a very, very, very casual Marvel fan. So I don't really know much about the MCU. I've seen a few films here and there, but I've gone to Marvel movies just because they looked fun. I saw folks online talk about the movies and I decided, let's see what all the fuss is about. And I'm sure there are others in my position, but reversed, for Star Wars. But what do you guys think? Am I right? Am I wrong? What are your predictions? Let me know in the comments down below.